Everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. It really felt like the transfer portal was starting to die down. But much like that Undertaker gif on social media, it's back, baby. It's coming back from the grave, and it is alive. And all of the news on Tuesday, most of the big news since we last recorded, centers on the best player in the portal, Hunter Dickinson. And if you listen to Monday's show, we did a pseudo Hunter Dickinson update where I basically said, I think two things are on the table here for Hunter Dickinson. One, I suspect we'll start to get some sort of movement here in the next couple days. We think his visits are done. And again, he's a player. He's got to enroll at his next school probably by the end of this month, early June at the latest. So we'll probably start to get something over the next couple days. Maybe an announcement date, maybe we're going to get something. And then from there, I also said, like, I think Kansas is the favorite, but I don't know that there is a favorite because even I don't know if Hunter Dickinson knows at this point where he plans on going. So why do I bring it up? It is because Tuesday was a very adventurous day in terms of Hunter Dickinson's recruitment, updates, non-updates, etc. So let me explain. If you were off social media, if you were off the internet all day Tuesday, here's what you need to know. It really started on Monday night when Hunter Dickinson, he hosts, I think most people know, but he hosts a podcast on Barstool Sports. I think it's called the Round Ball Podcast with Hunter Dickinson. And his co-host on that show, his name's Marty Mush. I think he's a very funny guy. He put out a tweet on Monday night that said, recording Round Ball Pod tomorrow morning. What school do you think Hunter is going to? And so that tweet goes out Monday night, and then it just creates a firestorm on the internet where everybody assumes that Hunter Dickinson is absolutely committing on Tuesday. He's going to go on his show. He's going to, promote the show, and then he is going to tell us where he's going. Now, I said, on Twitter, I said, I don't know. It seems like a quick turnaround from the last visit at Villanova, but it sent the internet into a frenzy. And Monday night into Tuesday, the question was, when does this show drop, and is he making an official commitment? Well, as the day went on, you started to get some details. Marty Mush goes on with my buddy Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, and he says, look, I'm just the host. Whatever Hunter wants to do, I support him. I don't know if he's going to commit. I don't know if he's not going to commit, but stay tuned and pay attention, and we'll start to get answers later this afternoon when we record the show. So even his own co-host said, I don't really think he's going to commit, but you never know. And then from there, it just turned into a brilliant marketing ploy by Barstool, where it was, we're going to tape the show at 4. No, it's going to be 4:30. No, we'll start a little bit later. And will Hunter Dickinson commit? Make sure to stay tuned to see what happens. Now, if you listen to that show, and I actually did, I was actually out walking the dog, so the timing kind of worked out well anyway. Unfortunately, Hunter Dickinson did not commit, and we really didn't get that much clarification on what is going to happen with his recruitment. But what I would like to do is take 2 minutes to defend Hunter Dickinson here. Because in my opinion, and this is something I've talked about on this show every time that we've talked about Hunter Dickinson, I think there's this perception out there that he's doing it for exposure. He's doing it for attention. He's an attention whore. He's only doing it for clicks. He's only doing it to promote his show. Now, I do believe once Barstool kind of realized how big this could be, they very smartly decided to promote it and push it back and, hey, make sure to subscribe to the channel and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think Hunter Dickinson is actively misleading people just to build up his commitment. As a matter of fact, I actually think it's the opposite. If you listen to the show, and again, I was able to listen to most of it, he kind of said, like, if I had an answer, I would have done it by now because I'm kind of over this. And so it goes back to a lot of what we've discussed on this show previously. I don't blame Hunter Dickinson. What you have to understand, what we all have to understand, not you as in you're wrong and I'm right. What we all have to understand, this is, in my opinion, the biggest decision maybe that Hunter Dickinson from a basketball standpoint will ever make. He's probably not an NBA player. He's going into his senior year in college. Now, we know he's got the extra COVID year, so he could, in theory, play 2 more years. But let's just assume this is probably his last year of college basketball. He'll probably get a degree at the end of next year, whatever. So I bring it up because think about everything that's riding on this decision. He needs to go to the best place that is going to put him in position to succeed individually, to become the best NBA draft prospect he can be, to develop his skill set the best that it can be, to maybe feature him in a way that he felt like he wasn't being featured at Michigan. It is maybe his last chance to compete at the highest levels of college basketball in terms of a national championship. Remember, he made an Elite Eight as a freshman, has not been back to the tournament since. You think trying to figure out where he can go and have individual success, but also have team success, you don't think that's a factor in this decision? Oh, by the way, let's call a spade a spade. NIL. I think everybody is kind of in the same ballpark. Like, I don't think anybody in that Final Five can't give him NIL money or is going to be completely outbid by others. But let's be honest about this. This might be the best payday he ever gets playing basketball the rest of his life. We don't know that for sure, but we know the numbers that an Oscar Tshiebwe made at Kentucky. We know the numbers that some of these other big-time stars in college basketball have made. And so because of it, that is all factored in as well. And oh, by the way, and this is an important part nobody's talking about, he finished his final visit on Sunday night at Villanova. So just think about that. Really, if you think about when he recorded the show, 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, he leaves Villanova. He leaves Philadelphia probably about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock on Sunday. And less than 48 hours later, you expect him to make a decision this big? I just don't buy it. And so I don't blame him. I don't think this is a publicity stunt from his perspective. Now, from his company's perspective, it might be, and it should be. Monetize the crap out of this thing. Suck every last dollar out of it that you can. But this is a decision that is going to potentially redefine his financial future, his professional future, his personal future. You think if he's not the missing piece on a national championship team at probably Villanova, Kentucky, or Kansas, that's not going to set him up financially for the rest of his life? Just think about it. You're the star of a national championship team at Kansas, Kentucky, Villanova. You're going to be reaping benefits of that for the next 50 years of your life. Whatever. So you get the point. I don't need to keep going on and on. What I will say is I do think this is a tough decision. I do think there's a lot to weigh. National championship potential, development potential. Oh, by the way, NIL. Oh, by the way, the friendships that he's built with guys like Justin Moore, the personal relationships that he has with the Maryland coaching staff, with the Kentucky coaching staff that coached him out of high school, that recruited him out of high school. There are a lot of factors to be weighed, and I don't blame him for waiting. In terms of a decision, I've said it from day one. I don't even think Hunter Dickinson knows, but since everyone he asked me, since the DMs are overflowing, my hunch is probably still Kansas, but listening to him speak about all his visits, he had really good things to say about John Calipari, about the experience at Kentucky, eating chicken tenders with John Calipari at a steakhouse, Jeff Ruby's. And he also had some really interesting things to say about Villanova. One of his best friends, Justin Moore, plays there. All the former players reaching out to him. And also Jay Wright sitting in on the meeting, almost like a Pat Riley type role at Villanova, the way Pat Riley's kind of the president of basketball operations with Miami. So it sounds like there's some really good options for him. I do think we probably get a decision by the end of this week, but I'm not going to blame him, and I'm not going to be mad that he has not made a decision yet. Quickly, let's change gears. Let's switch gears. Let's switch lanes, whatever you want to call it. There was a very interesting tripping over my own words here, piece of news out of the transfer portal on Tuesday when a very, very, very high profile player named Grant Nelson from North Dakota State entered the transfer portal. And before I get into who this kid is and what it means and where he could end up, a little like this is an important little nugget here to kind of keep in your back pocket. Grab it, throw it in your little pocket, okay? So we're coming up, we just passed a very important deadline, and we're coming up on another deadline, and they're kind of two ships crossing in the night. And it's important to note here over the next couple of weeks in the portal. So this past Sunday was the deadline to enter the NBA draft. So if you're a player that even wants to test the waters and keep your college options open, you had to declare by this past Sunday. Next, I'm trying to do some quick math in my head here. Next Thursday is the deadline for college players to enter the transfer portal. In other words, if you're not in by next Thursday, you can't transfer and be eligible to play next year. Now, you don't have to commit by next Thursday, but you have to put your name in the portal. You have to submit the paperwork for it to be done. So it's an interesting time because what I expect to see over the next not 2-3 weeks, but the next, whatever it is, 9 days between now and May 11th, I expect to see a number of players who have entered the NBA draft to also enter the transfer portal. And the idea kind of being, hey, I'm probably pursuing this NBA thing, but on the chances that I need to come back to college basketball, I want to have as many options as I can. I want to be able to return to the school that I'm at, but I also want to be able to see if there's something else out there for me. We've seen this quite a bit over the last couple of years. Remember, Pete Nance did this last year. Entered the NBA draft, tested the waters, all that good stuff, ended up deciding to return, but he had entered the portal. He ends up at North Carolina, was at Northwestern before. A few years ago, the deadline was much later. Marcus Carr did the same. He was one of several guys that did stuff like that. Entered the portal when the season ended, kind of was quiet in the portal, went through the draft process. It didn't work out, and he ends up deciding to come back to college and play at Texas. So this is all being brought up because on Tuesday, a player took that exact path, and a very high-profile player at that. His name is Grant Nelson. Now, some of you are probably sitting there saying either Torres, I never heard of this guy, or could he be that good? I'm here to tell you this kid's a legitimate NBA draft prospect, okay? Played at North Dakota State the last 3 years. By the way, from a beautiful little town called Devil's Fork, North Dakota. Looked it up. It's not very big. I can promise you that. But kind of a small school guy, went to North Dakota State the last couple of years, and this year he really blew up. 17 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. And if you watch film of him, skilled, can handle the ball. You know, he's kind of one of these guys. He can grab a rebound, go, dribble, pass, shoot, catch, outlet, whatever. So there'd been I'll say this, there'd been whispers in the Twitter streets over the last couple of weeks that he could enter. And on Tuesday, he decides to enter. Now, what will be interesting to see is, does he ever play college basketball again? As I said, he is projected by some as a second-round pick. I saw Sam Vecini put out his big board over at The Athletic. Grant Nelson was right outside that top 60, which obviously there's only 60 draft spots. I think it might even be a few less because of some certain things. This kid's a legitimate NBA draft prospect, though. And my understanding of his situation is that right now, as of this second, his plan is to see the draft process through. That in a perfect world, he is going to declare for the draft. He's already done that, go through workouts, get some kind of promise that is satisfactory to him, either a pick guarantee, hey, we'll pick you at some point in the second round, or a two-way guarantee, which would, allow him a certain amount of money. And if that's the case, my hunch is his plan is to stay in the draft. But if he decides to go back to college, I can promise you there will be a long list of schools that are very interested in him. But I can also say that as soon as Grant Nelson's name hit the portal, there was one school that I heard above all others that would make the most sense for Grant Nelson. And that is the school that is seemingly in on every transfer and every big-time prospect coming out of high school, and that is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, a couple things here it's important. One, as I just said, for the most part, my understanding is that Grant Nelson's plan is to continue to test the NBA draft waters to see the process through until the end. Deadline to withdraw from the NBA draft is late May, so this one probably won't get resolved anytime soon. Two, I already know what you're going to ask. Torres, how does Arkansas have so many scholarships? Well, here's the bottom line. We talked about it on Monday's show with Ron Holland, the five-star prospect, and we'll talk about it again here. I understand that there's a lot of moving parts at Arkansas. I understand that they've already taken 5 transfers this offseason. But right now, there are 13 scholarships with 2 players testing the NBA draft waters, Devo Davis and Jordan Walsh. And so in the coming days, in the coming weeks, we're going to get clarification on them. And as of right now, we might have 2 more scholarships become available at Arkansas. So there's a lot of moving parts, as there are with every program this time of year. And I think Arkansas, and frankly, not just Arkansas, I think a lot of programs did their homework and knew that this possibility could be coming, and that if he's available, that is a kid that we would be very much interested in sitting down with, talking with, and potentially bringing him in. Now, beyond Arkansas, first of all, let me say this too, by the way. If Arkansas gets him, I mean, I don't even know what to say about the roster that they would have together. Grant Nelson, NBA prospect. Trevin Brazil, NBA prospect. Bay Fall, McDonald's All-American in the front court. In the back court, L. Ellis, 17 points per game at Louisville. Tremont Mark at Houston. Maybe Devo Davis is back. Maybe Jordan Walsh is back. Point being, there is a lot of moving parts with this Arkansas squad, but I already have them in my top 5. You add Grant Nelson to the mix here. Whew. I mean, you might be talking about right up there with Duke, maybe UConn, maybe a couple others, depending on where Hunter Dickinson goes as a national championship favorite. By the way, a couple of, I don't think there's much other intel out there on Grant Nelson. Heard a little bit of Creighton buzz. Creighton is in that area of the country. There's ties between the 2 staffs. I believe Greg McDermott at one point coached at North Dakota State. I could be mistaken on that. They obviously got Baylor Shireman last year out of South Dakota State, and they too could have an opening on their roster depending on what Ryan Kalkbrenner does. Bottom line, stay tuned. But Grant Nelson, I believe, is officially right now the second best player in the portal behind Hunter Dickinson. So keep an eye on him. It will be interesting to follow. By the way, a couple other news and notes from the portal. One, big time name went in last week, Jordan Dingle, who was the Ivy League Player of the Year at Penn, second leading scorer in college basketball. Another player who's currently testing the NBA draft waters that will also see what college options are out there. I don't know that it makes a ton of sense for Kentucky, but his dad did play for John Calipari at UMass back in the day. I remember his dad very well. I'm feeling very old thinking about it. There's some ties to Rick Pitino, so maybe St. John's gets into the mix, but a lot of different variables with him. And then one more name to keep an eye on that I've heard a lot of good things about. I saw him play in person this year, but heard good things out of the portal. Trey White, a player who started his career at USC, started every game at USC, entered the portal. Alabama's on him, maybe to replace Jaquan Walton, the kid that got kicked out of the program even before he signed. I know Alabama fans, he wasn't officially with the program, but we all get it. And yeah, Alabama's one, Louisville's one. Interesting name to keep an eye on in the portal. By the way, as this stuff keeps going, we're going to keep updating. Eventually it will end,